Hey guys, in today's video, we're going to talk about the effects that water can have on certain types of hard surface flooring. The fact is that not only water, but moisture can wreak havoc on certain types of floors. When choosing specific types of flooring for your home, you really need to take in consideration the presence of water and moisture. Now, we've all heard the term wet areas, and that applies to your kitchen, bathroom, and laundry room where water is present daily. Other sources of moisture that you might not consider are things like the atmosphere itself. High humidity areas can really cause damage to certain types of floor, mainly laminate and hardwoods. Another source of moisture is the foundation itself. In both new and older homes, moisture can be present from a variety of sources. A couple of less thought of sources of water are swimming pools. The in and out with wet feet can really cause damage to your floors over time. Also, untrained pets. That puppy puddle, it can ruin your floor. To see the effects that water has on certain types of floors, we're going to do an old-fashioned science experiment. We're going to take this bucket here, fill it with water, and then put a variety of hard surface samples in there, let them sit overnight, and document the results. We're going to start out by putting some laminate samples in here. It's a very durable product, but the fact is the core does not like water. Next, we got a couple samples of solid hardwood. I have one that's raw and then another one that has a layer of stain and 2 layers of finish. We're going to move to a few samples of engineered floor. They're again a very durable, beautiful product, but there's a good chance that we'll see some delamination, maybe even some warping. Then we're going to move into our vinyls. Have a couple different ones. We have the WPC, we have your standard glue down, and then also a click lock vinyl. All vinyl flooring really likes water. And last but not least, tile. Okay, so now it's time for the results from our experiment. After a nice long bath, let's see how the flooring fared. We're going to start out with engineered. We put a couple samples in here, and the results were about the same on both pieces. Surprisingly, there was no delamination of the layers, but there was some warpage and some movement, especially right here on the groove section. It started coming together. Another thing to point out is the grains of the wood on the face really started opening up when exposed to water. Next up is laminate, and like engineered, we had similar results with both samples. As expected, we did have a lot of swelling in the HDF core. However, I was surprised that there were no bubbles in the surface. But keep in mind, we might see those bubbles when the flooring dries. Next up, we're going to take a look at the solid hardwood flooring. Now, if you remember, I put 2 samples in here. One was a raw, unfinished board, and then the next board had 1 coat of stain and 2 coats of polyurethane finish like you'd find on the job site. The first piece here is the unfinished. Surprisingly, not too much movement, not too much warpage, but you can really feel that the grain opened up when exposed to water. Very surprisingly, there was a lot of movement in the piece that had the finish on it. As you can see, it completely bowed. And what caused that is that being exposed to the water caused the back side that was not protected to expand, and the front side that was protected stayed stable. So that's what caused it to bow. Now let's take a look at the vinyl. The first sample is just a basic glue down 2mm vinyl. I don't see any visible damage, warping, or any signs of the water. Up next is a click lock vinyl. There again, no visible signs from being soaked in water. And last but not least, out of the vinyl family is WPC. Now WPC is a relatively new product, and one thing to point out, it does have a core and a wear layer. And as expected, there was no delamination. The vinyl family and WPC are perfect products for wet areas. Now the final product that we're going to fish out is tile. Now for this experiment, I used a piece of wood look tile. The reason I did this is because of the size of our bucket. The results will be the same regardless of the style or size of the tile that you use. and as expected, zero signs of damage or effects from the water. So the floors have had a couple days to dry out, and what we're going to do here is take a look to see if there's been any additional damage or change. We're going to start out with the engineered. And the engineered, not too many changes there. One thing is it's stayed very stable and straight, so no warping there. And if you'll remember, engineered hardwood flooring by nature is a very stable product, and it really showed in this experiment. One thing that I did see is we pointed out earlier about the grain starting to separate when exposed to water. You can still see that once the floor has dried out as well. Moving on to laminate, same deal that we saw earlier. There was a whole lot of swelling in the core, especially around the edges where the water was exposed directly to the core, but I was really surprised that we didn't see any type of bubbling or separation on the surface layer. So I was fairly surprised at how both of those products held up in the water. Now moving on to the solid, same deal. You'll remember that we had one piece that had stain and finish on it, and it was really warped. And once it dried out, it stayed warped. Now the piece that didn't have any finish, it was raw, there was a whole lot of movement once it dried during the drying process. Now one thing to point out about solid hardwood, it doesn't like any sudden changes in atmosphere. The flooring actually, before it becomes flooring, once it's lumber, it goes through a drying process that takes 3 to 4 months where they dry it very, very slowly in a controlled environment to make it as stable as possible. So any sudden change to solid hardwood, you're going to see some movement and warpage. Moving on to the vinyl families, I looked at all of these samples, really inspected them. I didn't see any signs of damage. So the vinyl and the WPC held up very well. And the same with the tile. Looked it over, didn't see any effects of the water. So definitely the tile and vinyl had no effects of the water, where the solid, laminate, and engineered definitely did show some changes when exposed to water. The reason we did this experiment is to show firsthand the effects that water can have on certain types of flooring. So when you're choosing which products to use in your next project, you're now armed with a little bit more information that'll help you buy like a pro.